A good day to everyone. Once again, we are back, uh, and today we have a very special guest with me. I have Mr. Manoj Thakur with me. Manoj is a very senior investment manager professional, worked abroad as well as in India, has been handling large quantity of funds, especially in equities, has experience for both listed and unlisted space, and for the startups also. So, welcome, Manoj. So,
Hello, Deepak.
yeah. So Manoj, just to start with you, the discussion, definitely will like to have your views initially, how you look at the landscape post this pandemic.
So the way we look at it is this is going to be one of the worst crises we've seen in decades. This is worse than the 2008 global financial crisis. And the reason I'm saying so is that at this time, this is 2020, the demand, there is a setback on the demand side as well as supply side. So this is like the first order impact of health related reason, and all of us are working from home. Obviously, there are some of us who are fortunate who can work from home without any loss of productivity or output. But obviously, not many sectors are such that they need to be at work and produce something or deliver certain service. And where the physical presence is required. For those people, there is a massive supply side issues. And the economic downturn, the effect of that is going to reset the demand going forward. So if you ask me, I'm fairly bearish on the scenario. So it's just not the health impact, and maybe India will come out of lockdown in let's say a month or two, but subsequently what happens, there could be certain semi-permanent damage to the demand, and certain sectors clearly will find it extremely difficult to come out of it, and this impact will be felt across different sectors, across different value chain within a particular company. So overall the situation is fairly bleak, I would say. So let's it's easy to be optimistic. I think it's in human nature, and but I'm personally seeing this and trying to be realistic here and seeing how the economy will play out. But whichever way I look at it, except we go in for a massive fiscal stimulus, unless we go in for that the way, let's say, US or Western, US or European countries have done, unless we do that, I don't see how the blow can be softened. So let us see. I guess we'll wait for the government to announce different packages, including for SME sector. And but again, looking at the overall government spends also, we do have a fairly fiscally constrained kind of budget. So it's not as if we have massive space there. And the reason I'm saying so is that the revenue also is going to shrink dramatically. Both the direct taxes, namely personal income tax as well as corporate income taxes, as well as indirect taxes, which is GST. And then there is a question mark on the divestment revenue of the country. A combination of all these three would mean that our fiscal deficit, even if we do not have any stimulus in place, itself is going to be fairly high. So if we go in for stimulus, then the fiscal deficit would go through the roof. We don't know what will happen to the credit rating of our country, which is just above the junk rating. So it's the lowest investment grade India has. So if the credit ratings are, they take a dim view of this, then there would be economic consequences of that, including the rupee depreciating. So these are hard choices. So at the macro front, as I mentioned to you, the situation does not look good.
Yeah, Manoj, that's what we all are fearing of. But anyway, that stimulus that everyone is talking about, uh, how it will come, in what shape it will come, these are all speculations as of now. But in the meanwhile, in the landscape of various businesses, definitely one thing is clear: the large businesses who can afford this stagnancy period, yes, survival is there, and definitely it will take time to normalize the supply chain and to create a further demand. But how about the lower end of the businesses, the small and medium enterprises? One, their balance sheet strength is not so great. Uh, you know, can they hold on to this stagnancy period? And if they have to hold on the stagnancy period, what do you recommend? Means, with your experience, what should they do?
So maybe I'm making a slightly dramatic statement. I think extremely weak businesses, poor businesses, businesses who have massive cash crunch, businesses who do not have a very strong value proposition to offer to their customer. I think those businesses should rethink whether they need to continue as going concern. I know this is not what everybody may like to hear, but exiting a business is part and parcel of a capitalistic society where if there is very limited hope of the businesses surviving, and we can see writings on the wall. Writing on the wall that is going to be close to impossible to turn around the situation. The founders, promoters do not have cash, personal cash to put in. The customers are not releasing payment, and we do, and a business has certain costs. Then, to be very honest, they should start thinking of exiting the business and at least conserve or liquidate and voluntarily liquidate and see what what can remain and what they can take back home. So this is exiting the businesses should be actually seriously considered in such a bleak scenario. So that's number one. Number two is that clearly which is very commonsensical, conserving cash is the mantra, where any any new projects you're doing, any new products you're developing, anything which is capital expenditure you're doing, everything should be stopped. And I'm making again a very sweeping statement because this is not the time to experiment. This is not the time to expand. This is not the time to buy a new machine. So conserving cash is extremely important in this situation. Now, conserving cash also can come from looking extremely hard at your expenses. Be it your employee cost, be it the way you source your material. I'm sure SMEs in general are fairly efficient in this manner, in this aspect. So I don't know whether how many low-hanging fruits are there, but whatever they are, just squeeze efficiency out of any and every resource you have. The third thing is the employees and some of the senior employees. this is a time where if they have been with you, the business is dependent or critically dependent on them, please try to share equity with them. So if they are taking a hit, let's say all of you agree that the senior management team takes a 50% salary cut, and this is a hypothetical case, so that 50% is the sacrifice these professional managers are doing. Can you compensate them by ownership stake in the company so that they don't feel that they are the only ones taking the hit? So if they can relate to the ownership, again, not all managers will be able to relate to the shares, but somebody who has seen the business and can relate to the value of ownership in a company, this is the time to give that, so that you conserve cash, give salaries at least to the management team who can appreciate the value of ownership. This is the time to share ownership. So this is about conserving cash. The third thing is, I think seriously people should start thinking of M&A. I know mergers and acquisitions don't happen in smaller companies, but I think this is the right time to start seeing whether combining strengths with a competitor, either by merging the two businesses, or somebody who wants to kind of do forward integration, meaning you are doing a part of the entire value chain, somebody who is controlling the value chain, whether he wants to buy you out. So M&A should also actively be considered, and I think uh, innovative firms, investment banking firms, boutique investment banking firms can definitely help think through this, because we don't really think very hard on M&A in SME space. So that's something which we should consider. Needless to say, if any government interventions should actively be kind of, the SME should benefit from those. So any soft loan, any moratorium, any and everything you can do to kind of get financing in this. And the last item is actually, if you are really, really confident about the future and about your business, then put your own cash in it, because you need to survive. You need to survive 2020. So I know, I don't know how many of the promoters will have personal cash, but this is a time for you to kind of sell your maybe public market portfolio, because you don't know, by investing in stock market where you have zero control on the movement of the stocks, that money might be better utilized in your own business. Because if you survive 2020, I'm sure you will, you can then survive any difficult situation. So I think, so these 4-5 options I presented, I think all of them and a combination of all the four should also be explored.
Well said, Manoj, and it was really good advice. But beside this, if I ask you more specifically and more micro, that, like, fine, my product or services are sustainable, entrepreneur can say that, whatever suggestion in the part one you said, they try to implement. But what, with your experience, an entrepreneur should do to improvise his cash flows in this situation? What do you suggest?
So I guess, Indian entrepreneur is very, very smart. Indian promoters are smart, so they really understand cash flows. I should not be advising them. Having said that, as I mentioned to you, drop all experimentation, drop all capital expenditure, work with your customer and try to kind of collect payment, um, reduce expenses. So I think I shared a lot of options, including uh, including strategic options like mergers and acquisitions, selling or closure or selling of the businesses. So all these are options. But let's the first thing we need to do is to accept the reality. I think a lot of time what happens is we are hardwired to be optimistic, and nothing wrong with that. That's how who we are, human beings, especially all of us who are running businesses. We have to be optimistic because otherwise we can't lead the team. So we are hardwired to be optimistic. But at the same time, what I would urge, this is a time where we need to be as realistic as possible, call spade a spade, admit that there is a problem, admit that our customers are also suffering, admit that the demand is reset downwards. So these harsh realities, as early as possible, if you start accepting and admitting, then you will start taking decisions with clear mind. Again, I may sound a bit pessimistic or bearish, but if I see the reality that way, I'm going to call out that reality. Having said that, by the way, all this is this is this is this is all practical, but at the same time, let us not forget that there is ingenuity in entrepreneurs. There is innovativeness. There is can-do spirit. All this solution-oriented entrepreneurs. So these are the entrepreneurs or promoters are meant to solve these problems. And I'm sure with the kind of entrepreneurial spirit we have in our country, many of the entrepreneurs will be able to solve these problems. Also, at the same time, my view is that the Indians in general are fairly resilient lot, and we experienced that in demonetization time. I'm sure a lot of other economies would have taken a massive hit in terms of how demon could have happened, and whereas we as the whole country. So there is huge resilience amongst our Indian citizens, Indian consumers, Indian businesses. So that actually can surprise us positively. So let's not forget about these aspects also. But having said that, I just want to make sure that I communicate that we need to be realistic in this time, take hard decisions, save on salaries, give equity to employees. Any and every decision where your expenses, your cash outflows can be curtailed, we should take hard look at it. We should absolutely take hard look at it. Yeah.
Manoj, really thanks you for your pearls of advice. Definitely, I'm sure that the entrepreneurs who may be watching this may gain out of this a lot. And I'm sure this can-do approach of Indian entrepreneurs will definitely make them sail through with this hard times. Thank you very much, Manoj. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.